So right here. All right, and we're ready to go. All right, everyone, this is our first time doing this, so let's see whether or not we can knock it out the box. Thanks for joining us today. And I see some of you over here saying that you can't hear. Okay, all right, we're good. Hopefully you guys can hear us. Let us know on all the platforms. Just shoot us a message and just say you can hear us or whatever. I'm going to jump in real quickly. We do have a guest with us today, and we have been trying to, within the context of all of the platforms that we're on at noon, for the past 6 weeks, we've been doing the love languages, and we finished that. So for those of you who want to go back and check out the love languages, you can go to our app under the sermons icon. The app is 6 Mile Zion Baptist Church, and you can get to it on Android or Apple. You can also, if you're a 6 Mile Zion member, you can go to your Tavely account and click on the CHMS piece as well. And then finally, if you're on Facebook, then you can just go to our church's Facebook page, and it's there. So today is going to be our finale, and we're just going to take a 2-week break. And so I'll tell you what we're going to do at the end of this. But we do have with us, and I like to make sure that I officially give welcomes and officially give intros, because people work hard, and I do not like it when, somebody comes and they be like, they just here in the name of the Lord. No, this person has studied and has put in the time. And this is one of our co-laborers here at 6 Mile Zion Baptist Church, but many of you all may not know what else she does. So I just want to share real quickly. Dr. Jessica Young Brown is a counseling psychologist who serves as an assistant professor of counseling and practical theology at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University. In this capacity, she teaches and provides consultation and program development on issues of vocation, spiritual formation, and human development. She is also a licensed clinical psychologist in private practice. All right. So she is in private practice, and she is a professor at the School of Theology at Virginia Union University. She completed her undergraduate education at Elon University in Elon, North Carolina. She then matriculated at Virginia Commonwealth University, where she received her MS and PhD degree. So she is a real PhD. So she ain't one of these honored PhDs. She is a real PhD. All right. And so that's her academic work. She's also engaged at a community level. So she works in her home district in Henrico County. Most recently, as a chair on the board of mental health and developmental services, but she's still on that board, and also the vice president of the board of directors for VIP Care, which is a nonprofit organization focused on providing faith-based counseling services in Richmond. All right. Her primary area of expertise is the area that she's going to share with us from today, which is the intersection of mental health and faith. All right. And so she is the author of this book here. See the beginning at the top of it? Making Space at the Well, which focuses on mental health and church. And you don't have to wait. So I'm going to tell you now, if you just want to look it up, you can get a signed copy from Jessica. So you can go to her, Dr. Brown, you can go to her website, which is Dr. Jessica Brown. So that's Dr. Jessica, Jessica Brown, BROWN. And we'll circle back with that again and put it in the chat.com. All right, so you get a signed copy there, but you can also get a paperback by going to justinpress.com. And you can do the search Making Space at the Well, or you can get the Kindle version on Amazon.com. But I'll circle back at the end and share all of that. Welcome, Dr. Brown. And I'm going to, so I think on our Facebook page, we have it tagged there if you want to click the link. And so it's easy if you're on Facebook, and we'll put it in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen while you get started. Is that okay?
Sure, that's fine.
Uh-oh. Let me see what I need to do. Turn up the mic. Mic is turned up.
You can't hear me?
No, I can hear you. I can hear you. Good. Yep. So while you're starting, do you want me to go ahead and share the screen now?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay. All right, great.
So welcome, everybody. I do just want to say hello to some home folks. I haven't had a chance to hug everybody in quite a few months, but it's good to know that we're able to connect virtually. So the goal for our time together is really just to kind of talk about how we care for our mental health during times like these. We have a lot going on, and it can be hard to figure out where to start and where to focus. And so what I first want to do is just really name the different things that we're experiencing as people, as Black people, as church folks, and then spend some time talking about some strategies for what we can do to try to maximize our mental health and be as healthy as we can be. Are we having trouble with the slides?
Yeah, we're coming.
Okay.
Almost there.
So I'll just pull up my version and kind of get started. So the first piece I think it's important to talk about is to just name, thank you, all the different things that we're dealing with as a people. So the first issue is that really since March, everything for us changed, right? Many of us either transitioned to working from home, to homeschooling. Some of us actually lost jobs as a result of this pandemic. Some of us are essential workers and we're still going to work, but there's greater risk associated with that, right? Everything shifted. We haven't been in the church building as a group since March. We haven't been able to do things as we normally can. And even though sort of some of those restrictions are lifting, right, the risk level hasn't changed. And so life really isn't back to normal. And so there's that piece of just, as human beings, we like routine. And so our routine has shifted. Then there's this concern that we have around health. We very quickly learned that Black folks were disproportionately affected. There's the little one, he's fun too. We very quickly learned that Black folks were disproportionately affected by COVID-19, and that's due to kind of a host of factors. And all of that kind of causes and reinforces the stress in the body that we're going to spend some time talking about. And then over the past couple of weeks, we are reminded again of issues of systematic racism, police brutality, and then our responses to that. And so I want to just kind of take a minute to name all of that and the impact that has on our mental health. And then we'll spend some time talking about what we can do to take care of ourselves. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, so I'm calling these the original stressors from COVID-19 because in some ways, now that we're entering month 3 or maybe month 4 at this point, I'm kind of losing count too. In some ways, it's kind of old news that we are sheltering in place or quarantining, that we can't go to church, that we can't do these things, right? And so transition is a challenge. I'm tired of that, our finances looking kind of funny for a lot of us, right? I am blessed that I still have a job and can still work from home, but homeschooling and being everybody in the same place all at the same time for extended periods of time adds a whole different element. And then the other piece is that we are inherently relational people. A big piece of what helps us to function as human beings is those connections that we have with other people. And so that process really has been interrupted in some ways. We can get back to a little of that now, but it's still not the same. We can't hug, we can't gather in big gatherings of people. We can't do the things we normally do, right? We can't have fellowship period at church and go around hugging people. That's not going to work for a while, right? While we're still dealing with this. And so when those things that we lean on for support change, one of the consequences is that we can feel stressed, isolated, overwhelmed by all of these different factors. Next slide.
And Dr. Brown, we have about 30 people who are listening on our conference call too. So
okay, great.
Yep, just letting you know that.
Okay, thank you. So then we have what I'm calling health-based anxiety. So one of the really scary pieces about COVID-19 is that it was this wild card that we couldn't figure out what it was, what was going on, what was happening, how do we get it? Is it surfaces? Is it breathing? Is it droplets? Can we be 6 feet away? Do we have to be 12 feet away, right? It seemed like the rules were constantly changing, and there was this unknown risk that it was really hard to make sense of. And we also, frankly, have had unclear and inconsistent messaging from our government about what are the right things to do and when we should do those things. And all of that can be really, really, really confusing for us. It can be hard to make sense of, how do I determine what the right thing to do is? We may ourselves or have family members who are immunocompromised, right? And those folks are at even higher risk. So little things like going to the grocery store or going out to get something to eat, right? It really amps the risk up. And I've talked to lots of people who are like, if I cough, then I get concerned. Do I have it? What's going to happen to me? We just have questions about so many things. And one of the things that it can be really challenging to deal with in moments like these is that so much of what happens is out of our control, right? We as Black folks know that whether it's medical systems, whether it's the insurance system, there are all these factors that if something is wrong with our bodies, we are just at higher risk. And we've seen that play out, right? And that's one of the reasons that churches have made the kinds of decisions we've made around not jumping back into having services and all those kinds of things. But it's also important for us to be aware on a personal level of the stress it might be causing us to manage those things. I know for me, one of the challenges has been because I'm at home more, if the TV's on or if I'm scrolling social media more, I'm constantly bombarded with messages about all of the things going wrong. And we're not always aware of the fact that that can really take a toll on our overall mental health. Next slide. So what I really want us to think about is the way these multiple stressors impact our bodies. Reverend Nelson was talking about how I have a private practice. And so one of the things I've been hearing a lot from people and even experiencing for myself is this sense of just feeling like our bodies are out of whack, right? Feeling run down, tired, trouble sleeping, feeling this sense of mental cloudiness, not being able to think correctly or think straight. A lot of people have described, let's say you're working from home or teleworking or even going to work, maybe not feeling as energetic, not feeling as effective, not feeling as focused. You might find yourself being irritable. You might find yourself having digestive problems. Appetite is all over the place, right? There's a wide range. And what I want to call your attention to is that our bodies, our minds, and our spirits are all connected. And so when we start having symptoms like that in our body, it could be a sign that we are stressed or overwhelmed, and we really need to attend to our mental health. So I think it's normal for us to be experiencing that stress because we're in a very stressful situation. It's also important for us to attend to it and try to work with it, to not just wait for it to go away or ignore it. So let's add on to that, and you can go to the next slide now. Let's add on to that as Black folks in America, we are kind of constantly aware of the impact of racism, right? Of the danger of being in situations with people who are in power, right? And we've always known that. That's our history in this country. It's a part of what shapes the way we move through the world in this country. It's why we as parents have to sit our kids down and have the talk, right? But when situations like this happened, there's the killing of an unarmed Black person and media attention is raised, what it does is it re-exposes us to the trauma that we're already aware of, right? And so there was already the stress of just this pandemic moment, and we've added to that the stress of all this race-related violence. And part of the challenge, right, is that because we've experienced it, we see these things and know this feels familiar to us, right? But then when things are made accessible to the wider range of people, particularly through social media or whatever the case may be, we also have to deal with the people playing devil's advocate or the people telling us we're not seeing what we're seeing. Gaslighting is a term where basically someone tries to convince you that you're making something up or you're being unreasonable when you know what you feel and what you experience is true, right? And so there can be just the stress of trying to be heard, right? Of feeling like, we've been in this country hundreds of years and we're still fighting the same fight. And people don't believe us and people don't see what we're angry about, right? And so then there's the desire to act. So we see these uprisings and protests, which are taking place all over the country and all over the world. And they're important, right? To stand up and fight back is important. And it also puts us at risk for this virus that has not gone away, right? So even as we try to advocate for ourselves, even as we stand up as we should for being seen and heard in this country, it costs us, right? And I think we just have to acknowledge that that is a heavy burden to bear. It's necessary. It's what we need to do to try to make an impact in a country that has been good at ignoring us and looking down on us and seeing us in certain kinds of ways. But we also have to acknowledge that we are not robots, and it costs us to be managing all of these things at the same time. And so I really want to spend the rest of the time thinking about and talking about what are some of the ways we can really care for our mental health in response to all of these different things going on. Next slide. So the first piece remember, we've talked about the way stress can impact the body. All of us experience stress. And so all of us have to deal with it. But our bodies respond to stress as if we are fighting something physical. So every time you're stressed, even if it's like a conflict with a friend or a family member, your body reacts as if you need to jump out of a burning building or run from a bear. And so those same chemicals that prepare us for physical action are really good if we're actually engaging in physical action. But if we're not engaging in that physical action, if it's more of a verbal or relational conflict, it ends up negatively impacting the body over time. And that's why we get headaches and the sleep problems. It's one of the reasons why we as Black folks are more likely to have things like high blood pressure or diabetes, or more likely to have strokes, is because we have that chronic stress on our bodies as a result of racism and other kinds of factors that we're more likely to experience. And so it's very important that we as Black folks take care of our bodies. That's as simple as sleep and nutrition and water intake, but it's also exercise. It's also taking time to have quiet time, to release, to engage in our spiritual disciplines, to really calm our bodies, to engage in deep breathing. Often we don't have the time or make the time to care for our bodies in the way we need to, but it's very important and it could save our lives. We as a people often get blamed for some of the systemic factors that impact our health. The truth is, many of those things are outside of our control, right? But we can control the way we take care of our bodies. And so sleeping, exercising, making sure that we have nutrition is actually one of the ways, not just to care for our bodies, but also to care for our mental health. Because there's lots of research that suggests that when we care for our bodies and our bodies are healthier, our minds and our emotional health responds to that. The second piece is to act in ways that feel authentic. So many of us in this moment in particular feel this urge to do something, to respond to calls to action, to protest, to do something, to be a part of this really important movement that is happening in our country. And my encouragement is that we can take a moment to reflect on what are the ways that I personally can have an impact, right? There's some people who are going to be out in the streets marching, and that's the best thing they can do. There's some folks who can use their money as influence and donate to organizations who are doing the right thing. There are other folks who can educate and advocate. There are other folks who are going to be on the front lines with lawmakers. And so if you are immunocompromised, maybe you don't need to be out there protesting, right? Maybe that's not the safest way for you to act, but there could be another way. Maybe you decide from this point forward, as much as I'm able, I'm only going to buy from Black businesses, right? There are all these different kinds of ways that you can act to be a part of this movement, because this is not something that needs to be 2 weeks and then it's over, right? This is a continuing process to have our voices be heard. And there are lots of different ways that can happen. Next, think about ways you can connect creatively. So a part of that is what we're doing here, right? Having opportunities to connect via worship, via Bible study, where we can be in our own homes, but call on the conference line or check in via social media. It's a time that you can make sure you have a phone call set up with some of your friends, right? In our neighborhood, we've been, just sitting out in our backyards and able to talk while being socially distant, but still spending time with each other, right? And so remember we talked earlier, one of the challenges of this moment is the isolation that comes if we're all at home and we can't be together the way we normally would, but we can get creative with that. And especially now that restrictions are lifting some, if we can do that safely, it's an opportunity to really just be with people, to spend time and connect with people we love, even if we can't spend time with as many people or spend time in the same ways that we normally do. I also really encourage people to think about Sabbath. So, of course, one of the commandments was remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, right? So what does that mean in this context? First, I think it means that we need to set aside time that we can take a break from those things that feel like work. And so for me, some of that has been taking a break from social media, because there's only so many times I can see a video of a George Floyd or an Ahmaud Arbery being killed, right? It is that even though I'm working from home, I still protect some of that time so that I'm not constantly working just because I have access to my computer. Perhaps it means that as a family, we take a break from the TV and go outside and just enjoy nature, right? And so think about it as taking a break to refocus, to reset, to regroup. And if there are things in your life that you notice, oh, when I encounter this thing, I do start to feel tense, I do start to feel irritable, that's an opportunity for you to think about, what would it look like for me to pull back? I think it's so important for us to acknowledge that it's okay not to be okay in moments like this. It's okay to feel anger, to feel sadness, to feel frustration about everything that's going on. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It's also okay to take the time you need to reflect and regroup before you act, right? There's not going to be an expiration date on injustice. And so, yes, there's urgency in this moment, but because there are so many of us, when we pool our resources, we don't all have to be working all at the same time. The next piece is to really embrace and engage in community. Our church community is certainly one of the ways we do that. So it's not just watching worship, but logging onto worship at the time when everybody's there so we can interact via the comments, right? Or maybe it's some folks that you haven't seen in a while. After watching the sermon, connect with them and say, hey, what were the points that stuck out to you about the sermon today, right? It's also thinking about how we can connect with other organizations, whether it's an activism organization, whether it's a support group, maybe it's a leisure activity that you enjoy and there are other people who are really engaging in that as well, right? And so there isn't one way, but we must maintain those connections because those are the things that keep us grounded, that keep us feeling supported, that keep us feeling like we are on the same page with other people who are like-minded and who have the experiences we have. And especially as we're dealing with this current moment of so much conversation around Black Lives Matter, around police brutality, around what's the right thing to do, it's another opportunity for us to really connect with other people, right? And to just say, these are the experiences that I've had, and here's how I think we should address this. There isn't one right answer necessarily, but those conversations are crucial to kind of keep us engaged, to keep us aware, and also to just know, like I said, that we're not in it alone, that we have other people who are experiencing the same things that we've experienced. Next slide. So another thing that I think can sometimes get lost in times like these is that one of the ways that we can help ourselves to cope in difficult times is to really think about ways we can express ourselves creatively. For some of us, that's drawing. For some of us, it's gardening. For some of us, it's writing. For some of us, it's graphic media. For some of us, it's singing. For some of it's yarn work, right? The possibilities are endless there. For some of us, it could be coloring, right? But on the one hand, it's a way to, if you have a message to get that message out. On the other hand, it's a coping strategy. And so one of the things we know about the way our minds and our bodies work is that when we are engaged in creative activities, that can be relaxing and stress reducing for us. And so that's an opportunity to do something potentially fun, but also that has a positive impact on your stress level. And it's important to be able to make time for that because often in the hustle and bustle of our lives, we can be so work focused that we don't take that time to be creative, to enjoy, to play, to have fun, right? What would it mean to just do something silly with your family? To not have an agenda, to not have it be based on productivity, but to just do it just because it feels fun and it's a way that you all can enjoy each other, right? Next, really engaging in spiritual disciplines. For many of us, the Sunday morning experience can be kind of the thing that grounds us, that keeps us focused. And for many of us, not having that tangible experience of going to the church building can really feel like a loss. It's not the same when I'm sitting in my living room watching worship as it is when I come into the church building. And that's okay. But one of the ways I can cope with that reality is by engaging in my spiritual disciplines on my own and really committing to those. Whether it's devotion, whether it's meditation, whether it's, you have certain passages in your Bible that you're going to read, right? Whatever that devotion is, whether it's listening to worship music that you really enjoy, take the time to commit to those things. This time, just like all the other times in our lives, but perhaps more so, it's important to have a reminder of who God is for us and our relationship with God, right? It can be hard to make sense of everything that's going on in this world. And I do not pretend to have it figured out, but I do know about God. I do know that God ultimately wants the best for me and my community. I do know that God wants us to be healthy and whole, right? And so if I can remind myself of those things, even when it doesn't feel like it, it really allows us an opportunity to reconnect with our faith, to reconnect with who we know God is, and to reconnect with that stability that faith provides in our lives, which is so, so, so important. Next, we can set reasonable expectations for ourselves and others. I have been talking and thinking a lot about this idea in this moment in particular, that is so important that we really give each other grace, that we give ourselves grace, because the reality is things are not going to be perfect. We are all going to mess up. We are all going to have times when we don't do things the way we normally do. We are all going to have times when we make a mistake. We are all going to have times when we get frustrated, when we get irritable, right? And so my goal has just been to remind myself, like, look, I've never lived through a pandemic before. And so I don't know what that looks and feels like for me or for other people. And so if I have an opportunity to give somebody a break, I'm going to give them a break, right? Many of us are trying to figure out how to engage over new technology. Many of us are trying to figure out now in this moment, what does it look like to get back out into the world and still be safe, right? And so there are so many questions that we have, and we're not going to get it right all the time. So that means, it doesn't mean that I'm just permanently lowering my standards, right? But it does mean that I make room for the possibility that we all need a little space, that we all need a little wiggle room. And I'm also not going to beat myself up when I don't get it right, because I need that same wiggle room as a parent, as a wife, as a professor, as a worker, as a friend, right? All of those areas, I need grace just like I want to extend grace. And so that piece becomes really, really, really important. And lastly, I think it's important to focus on what we can control, to focus on the areas of our lives where we can have a say. So I can have a say about what happens in my home. I can have a say about making sure that I'm safe if I do need to go out. And I can have a say about making sure that I'm caring for my mental health by engaging in all these strategies. For some of us, that might look like setting up an appointment with a counselor to just say, I feel overwhelmed. I feel stressed out. I don't know how to manage all this stuff. For some of us, it may be sitting down with the people in our house and having a conversation about how we can make sure everybody gets what they need, but we don't totally get on each other's nerves, right? For some of us, it might be, even though we don't necessarily need to, setting up a schedule so that we can have some kind of regular routine and guidelines for how the day is going to go. One of the things that helps us as human beings is when our days are predictable. And so we can put that structure in ourselves, and that can really be supportive of our mental health. We can make sure that we get outside and get some fresh air when the weather is nice. We can make sure that we are able to connect with friends. And the piece I would encourage us to think about is that for those of us that are still kind of hunkering down, we have to be intentional about getting all these things done. They won't happen by accident, and we don't have to do all of them. This is not another assignment to add to your list of all the things you have to do, but really think about, of all the strategies that I've talked about, what are the ones that sound the most interesting to you, and how could you implement those, right? If you're feeling really lonely, maybe you need to focus on the social aspect. How can I connect creatively with people? If you're feeling bored, maybe think about something artistic that you can take on as a way to fill that space. If you're feeling pressure that you need to act and do something to respond to police brutality and this racially based violence, then sit down and do some research about ways you can be part of the movement, right? So this is not about doing everything, but it is about doing something that can help your overall well-being. If you're feeling spiritually dry, maybe it's engaging in those spiritual disciplines. If you're feeling exhausted and tired, maybe it's focusing on the physical strategies that you can do. And it doesn't have to be, a high intensity workout at the gym. It could be going for a walk. It could be doing some yoga or some meditation, right? It could be, as I said, gardening, right? There are all of these different ways. And the goal is that there isn't a one size fits all strategy, but there is something that will work for everyone. We don't have to just take at face value if we're feeling bad or if we're feeling overwhelmed. While it is normal to feel that way with everything that is going on, we've all felt that way. It doesn't have to be permanent. And so my encouragement to each of us is, if I'm feeling that way, how can I then begin to think about what are the ways I can care for myself, commit that time to myself, or ask for help so that I can feel better to cope with periods like this. Are there questions or, clarity that people need as we're thinking about how to implement some of these things?
So, yes. So we've been, we have a few questions that have come in on the chat, but I think if anybody has any specific questions for Dr. Brown now, just shoot a question in the chat, or if you're on Uber Conference, just unmute yourself if there's anyone who has a question. In the meantime, let me just say thank you. We do have a couple of persons who have said they appreciate this information. It was really great. These tips, strategies, and persons will be able to go back and listen and watch later to remind themselves of what they need during this particular time. But I think you covered a whole lot of information, and I think you've encouraged a whole lot of people. I don't see any questions coming in, nor is anybody unmuted. But before we conclude, do me a favor real quickly and run through how people can get the book. What's the best way? I know I shared it, plus we tagged it on some of our social media outlets.
Okay, so the best way depends on how quickly you want it and what format, right? So if you really want a signed copy from me, if you're somebody who knows me and wants your signed copy, I can order directly from the publisher and get it pretty quick, and I will ship it to you. So go to my website, drjessicabrown.com, and order it from there if you want a signed copy and you like the paper. If you don't care if it's signed or not, probably the best way is to go directly to the Judson Press website if you want a paper copy. If you like to do your reading digitally, you can order from Amazon. They do have the Kindle version. Amazon will eventually have the paper version again, but because of everything that's going on with the pandemic, they are, of course, prioritizing other things that are not books. So I don't know when the paper version will be back at Amazon, but if you just want a paper copy, you can get it from me. If you want it signed, drjessicabrown.com. If I know you, it'll be more than just my name. It'll actually be a message. If I don't know you, I'll say, thank you so much for buying the book and sign my name. I'm okay with either. And then if you just want the paper copy, again, jetsonpress.com. You can search Making Space at the Well. If you want the Kindle version, Amazon. So those are all the ways. I tried to make it really accessible, so you don't need to have some kind of specialized knowledge of really anything to be able to read the book. It's specifically for us as Black church folks talking about Black church stuff, because those are the people God is calling me to serve. So I hope you enjoy it.
All right. So there are a lot of people shouting you out and saying thank you in the comments. So again, I will say thank you. I think there is a question. Somebody's unmuted over here. What's the question, and then I'll share it.
Okay, the book coming, what is it, CD form, where you were talking it out in the book?
Yeah. So do you have an audio book?
No, but y'all pray. Maybe my publisher will ask me to record one. I don't have audio book yet.
Right. So right now, Miss Portia, she doesn't, but we need to sell enough of these copies so the request can come in for her to do audio book.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. All right. And Rosetta Parker here. Let me just read this. I can't get my screen all the way up. So it says, how can you politely dismiss yourself from the conversation of persons who want to continually engage in the current events of today?
Right. That's a great question. And I think it's something that we have a right to do. I'll give you an example. So a big piece of what I do is training mental health professionals in particular on generational trauma in African Americans and issues around Black mental health. And so I had someone send me an email basically wanting to just hear what I think about what's going on in the world. And I just don't feel like it. Like, I'm tired. I'm angry. I'm tired of talking about Black people dying. I just didn't have the space for it. And so what I said to that person was, I'm really happy that this is something that you're thinking about. I don't have the capacity to have this conversation right now. So you keep having that conversation, but you will have to have it without me. And I think it's okay for us to be unapologetic about that, because I was joking with a friend and I'm like, isn't that just like this country, that when y'all start realizing that Black people really have issues with this country, you ask for some more free labor from some Black folks. I'm just not, I'm not going to do it. And so I think it's okay for us to just say, I appreciate your interest. I'm not the person to have that conversation with you right now. I have a note in my computer, a list of books that people can read, that when they send me an email that I'm not going to do what they ask me to do, I just copy and paste that list of books for them. Just say, no, thank you, and keep it moving, and don't feel bad about it. You have a right to take a break and step away from that when you need to.
Right. So one of the things that I would suggest too, it goes along that line, and I think people will. You talked about extending grace, and so I think people will extend grace. I think I had that type of situation happen on yesterday, where somebody tried to or wanted to engage in conversation, and good intention person.
Yeah, of course.
To engage in conversation, and I just was not in the mental space at that point, and so I shared that person respected it. And said, please, let me know if and when you want to talk. Another statement. So another question. How do you suggest that we request grace from others? Especially supervisors at work.
Yeah. So I think probably that depends on your relationship with the person. Right. But at the very least, I think you can say, this has been overwhelming for me as a person. It's impacting me in the following ways, right? I'm having trouble sleeping. I'm doing whatever, right? And if it's a work, especially, have a specific ask, right? So let's say you normally work from 8 to 5. I'm asking your permission to begin work at 10. If I need to, I will work until 7, but I believe that I can get all the things I need to get done in that period of time. Like, I think, again, it depends kind of on the culture of your workplace, but ultimately the people who supervise us are concerned that we do our jobs. And so if you can say, here's how I can do my job with these, adjustments, then I would just say really specifically, here's how I propose, so that I'm still earning my paycheck, right? But I can also care for myself. Another thing that I've been doing recently, because I just haven't felt like it, is like on these conference calls and stuff, I've had my camera turned off unless it's absolutely required that I turn my camera on, because the people in the church who actually know me know that even if I don't want to tell you what I'm thinking, my face will tell you what I'm thinking. And so like one of my self-care things has been just like giving myself permission to have those responses. And I've been in some meetings where my reactions to people, it wasn't the politically correct reaction, right? And so being able to just turn the camera off and only have it on when I need it has given me the grace I need to just be a human being and have feelings and not be okay sometimes. I think if you're in a situation where you are unable to get that grace at work, because some of us, our bosses don't care. And, it's a sad reality, but it is. And so I think if you're in that situation, then number one, only work the hours they are paying you to work, right? Don't give any free labor, and really think about, how do I use my time off work to restore, not just to not be working, but really to rejuvenate, to refresh, to refill from everything that I've had to give out. And so one of the things I've had to do, because I'm one of those people that's kind of constantly checking email usually, I've had to take all my work emails off my phone and just really set a boundary there, because I was giving all this extra time and then trying to figure out, why am I so exhausted? Because I was working until 10 o'clock at night checking emails, right? And when we are feeling, remember that bodily stress that we talked about, when that stress is just sitting in our bodies, everything takes more energy, and we have to have the time to restore afterward.
All right. I think we might have lost that last. I don't know if you guys heard the last 10 seconds. I think I lost your volume there for a second. Yeah, I can hear you now. Let me jump in and say this real quickly, because I know a few of our folk are signing off, and I want to make sure that our members and all of you, hopefully if you were blessed by this today, you need to let the book bless you. I think Dr. Brown did say it. She said in a great way that the book is for everybody. It's not just for students. I mean, it's a book. You can pick it up, you can read it. It's easy to read, and I think it'll bless you. That you've heard today, you will see on the page of the book. And Mount members, if we were able to be here in space now, we would have had a book signing. We would have sold books, and we would have encouraged and lifted up and supported our sister. So this is the way we're going to do it now. I see a lot of you, some of you already have copies, but again, I'm going to encourage you, those of you who are members of Fifth Mount Zion Baptist Church, if you're able, go to DRJESSICROWN.com. Go to, I just had a brain freeze. Go to justinpress.com if you're in a hurry. Or you can go to Amazon.com and download the Kindle version if you want to download it there. But this book is worth having, all right? And I've got a signed copy here. And Dr. Brown, I want to thank you again. Again, there's a lot of people who are saying some very kind things. The title again of the book is Making Space at the Well. Making Space at the Well. Mental Health and the Church. Making Space at the Well. All right. Give me the website again to order a signed copy. And this is on Facebook. So I'm going to ask, we already have it Deacon Span, just look at the top of the post that you're looking at, and all of it is listed there. All right, we're going to do a rebroadcast of this tonight at 6:30, and we'll be here. Not Dr. Brown, but the rest of us. They'll hear all these questions and stuff. So hopefully, we'll live chat at 6:30 this evening, showing it again. So if you know somebody who missed it, then tell them to jump on again at 6:30. All these different platforms. All right, all these different platforms. Just 2 or 3 quick announcements, and then I'm gonna let Dr. Brown wrap up, and we're gonna be done. All right, so we need to real quickly, those of you who need scholarship applications and graduate recognition forms completed, you've got until Sunday. I need you to do that. Take care of that. Also, I said Tuesday on the prayer call that we're doing the drive-in worship on July 12th. That will be July 26th. We still got 5 weeks, so we'll get that straight. Also, make sure that you let folk know about this tonight. And if you need to give or want to give, then give. All right, go online, smgbc.org, Cash App, all of that. Doc, what do you want to share to conclude?
The last piece I would share is that if you're not okay, it's okay not to be okay, but it's also okay to ask for help and get what you need, whether that's from friends, whether it's from church, whether it's a licensed mental health professional. It's our responsibility to care for ourselves and to care for community. And these are some of the strategies that we can do on an individual basis. But if you're not sure where to start, ask for help. We are here to support you and to get you what you need.
Yep. That's a great word. Your church family is here for you. All of us. All right. We're going to sign off, guys. Again, if you know somebody needs to watch this and be blessed by it, 6:30 this evening. Thank you again, Doc. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let me pray real quick. Thank you. Dear God, we thank you for this day. And I pray for all that are listening and watching that something today bless them. And we continue to pray for our nation, pray for its people, pray for us during these journeys, that we are engaged, but that when we need to unplug for our own sanity, help us to do that as well. God, we know all things work together for the good, and we know even in the midst of all of this, you are working. This is our prayer in your name. Amen. All right. Bless you. Love you. Take care.
Thank you.